Hey friends, Mario Cavallo here with Dragon Quartz Audio. Boy, do I have a sound equipment and music selection comparison that I just made to tell you about. The results were so different than I expected them to be. And it teaches us about the subjectivity of equipment and what we're listening to. Here's the story. We start with Amari Deodato, 2001: A Space Odyssey. Wow. Billy Cobham on the drums. Ray Barretto, Latin jazz on percussion. Hubert Laws on the flute. Ron Carter on the bass. John Tropea on incredible electric guitar that just pops out. Stanley Clarke on bass. What a lineup, okay? And specifically the song Prelude to the Afternoon of a Faun, which starts very light and then builds. And also, so there's a lot of space and air and detail to listen to, high percussions and all. And then also a very specific deep bass note that I always listen for. This is a song I use as my test song to test the system, right? You're going to test your amp, test your speakers, test your DAC, test your turntable, test your cartridge, everything, okay? And this is vintage vinyl. What year are we talking? Oop, I can't find it. Probably something along the lines of 1978. Okay? So that's our song. And before we continue, if you want, either after or before, pause the video, go listen to Prelude to the Afternoon of a Faun with a really good pair of headphones or through your system, and you'll know which song I'm talking about. Okay? I listened to this song. I wanted to compare digital to beautiful analog. Okay? So here's what I did. This is my FX Audio M1 DAC. This is a very, very good Sabre DAC, about $250. It's been very well reviewed by several reviewers. It's just a really clean, open, wonderful, precise, transparent DAC. I guess people say there's differences between how DACs sound, but overall, it sounds as any good DAC between $200 and $400. It's a terrific DAC. Also happens to be an excellent headphone amplifier. It was really well reviewed for being a headphone amplifier as well. And it has a USB input. There's my very high quality USB wire to my Samsung Fold phone. And I went and found the digital file for Amari Deodato Prelude to the Afternoon of a Faun, RCA jacks, into my wonderful musical fidelity, end game quality M6i amplifier. This thing does 200 watts a channel into 8 ohms, 400 watts a channel into 4 ohms. It's got a big, open, spacious sound stage. It's open in the highs and has incredible grip and control on the bottom end of bass. This is an amazing amp, okay? Plug everything directly into there. So that's what I did on the digital side. On the analog side, two important points. The Amari LP16 turntable. Okay, you guys know I love that turntable and I sell it and I offer it. That's fine. Not going to talk about all that right now. A very, very good turntable. And importantly, with a Nagalka MP110 cartridge. It's like, okay. Two very different setups. I expected them to sound very similar, okay? I hadn't done a digital versus analog comparison, nor specifically on this album, for a really long time. Well, that is not at all what happened. And in the end, I noticed 2, 3 huge differences in the way the music was presented to me out into the room, which was 9 feet in my sitting chair right over there. I'm sitting through what I'm standing in the middle of right now, the JBL 530 stand mounts on very solid stands. Great speakers, dynamic range, throw a big sound stage, outstanding dispersion with the horn, JBL compression horn driver, surprising amount of deep bass with these speakers, because they're only 5 1/4 inch woofer, but they're in big cabinets, so down to almost, I think, 40 hertz, okay? And a very specific bass tone that I'll talk about in a minute. So, what happened? I started them at the same time. Dropped the needle on the record, and then started the digital file on the phone. But what I did is, then I paused and I waited 30 seconds so I could compare. So I listened for 30 seconds to this segment. I listened to the segments all the way through the song. I'd listen to this segment, and then I'd come over here. By the way, I have on the front end a Junction JA1 preamp, and I changed the selector so I can switch back and forth between listening first to the vinyl, and then the digital through the DAC was 30 seconds behind, so then I could listen to it again right away, that segment, 30 seconds to like a minute. And I could do that all the way through the song, so I could instantly hear the sound difference. Man, the sound difference was incredible, and it says so much about our equipment. And it became such a subjective experience. So what happened? Okay, well, I'm really used to listening to my vinyl. I've always said I love the turntable. It's certainly a terrific turntable. Okay. And then lots of people have nothing but great things to say about the MP110 cartridge. Okay. But something's going on, and I don't know exactly what. I'd heard other reviewers say, yes, for $130, $140, the MP110 cartridge is the cartridge. It's the best cartridge in that price range. Okay. I've also heard people say the Ortofon Blue is really, really good too. But cleaner, more precise. The MP110 sounds warmer. Keyword right there. Okay. So I'm listening to the opening, and Hubert Law's flute comes in. And it's strong and warm out in the room. Okay. All the highs were sparkly, and all the percussion is out in the space, and it's all very well delineated in the sound stage. So everything's as expected. I've heard it before through the turntable with the Nagalka MP110. And then I switched it to the digital file through the DAC. Now that's a very clean digital file. The sound presentation was completely different. The first thing I noticed was that it was far less warm and leaner, therefore clearer. Because I was like, wait a minute. So I thought the warmth over here from analog fit what a lot of analog lovers say, that it was a warmer, more organic, natural sound. Okay? Not necessarily accurate. Okay? But that through the DAC, it sounded more digital, more precise, more clear. And the mid warmth was gone to the point where if I said to you, hey, here's the flute out here, thick in the room, it just literally fell back to even behind the speakers on the soundstage, was far less prominent in the soundstage. So the mids just dropped in their output and with no warmth. It became a clinical, precise experience, listening-wise. All the sounds were still there with both setups, but the difference in the mid-range warmth and the forwardness shocked me. It surprised the heck out of me, and I said to myself, wait a minute. So this is not to say to you, hey, how does the Amari LP10 turntable sound? That's an inaccurate and inappropriate thing to even say, because it's not about the turntable. It's about the turntable with that cartridge, okay? I just found the warmth of the MP110. Now, the JBL 530s happen to have a bit of a hump around 1100 hertz, which adds more warmth in the mids. And there were times when I've always thought, I love the way my system sounds, but sometimes the mids sound too forward. There it is. It's the combination of the MP110 warmth along with this bit of a warm bump in the mids and the JBLs at around 1100. Interesting. I'd never heard it so starkly different until I made this comparison. The DAC, clearer, cleaner, precise, you could call it dry, far more recessed mids, but without a doubt, not a warm organic thing that enveloped you, but just a precise thing to listen to. Now, that was the case with guitars. That was the case with the flute. That was the case with Amir Deodato doing his Fender Rhodes solos, which on the whole album are amazing. It's just so, you can just hear the belling, that ringing bell sound of the Rhodes coming out into the room. I love the way it sounds, okay? So that was the first thing that I noticed, okay? And then the second thing, and I'm done for this review, and this is really, really important. The output of the mids on the DAC's digital side, as I said, was far less. I mean, we're talking less dBs, okay? And again, recessed back. So it was just a much smoother experience. Whereas over here, it was, I don't know, felt more live, felt more out in the room, felt more forward. It just was so different, okay? Now, so we say the mids were at a lower volume, not as impactful and not as out. Well, one other thing that I noticed. In this song, when it begins to kick up at about 3 minutes, the Fender Rhodes comes in a rhythm, boom, boom, boom. It's just awesome. And then the drums come in, and then a bass tone comes in, and it's this rhythmic, driving sound. It's fabulous, okay? And it crescendos, and then the violins and orchestra comes in, and it builds and it crescendos. And when it builds and it crescendos, the sound stage is big, okay? So with the DAC, all of that, again, sounded more clean and precise, and also was smaller. The soundstage wasn't as big. But it was still fine, sounded great, okay? But the mids were not popping out at you. The electric guitar was not popping out at you. It didn't have that warmth, like I said. But I mentioned the second thing here, and that was the bass tone. This is what proved to me that the JBL 530s can put out such a deep bass tone, and that the Amari as a turntable will grab deep bass out of your records, and that the MP110 cartridge is capable of pulling the deep bass out of your records as well. Because when I play the vintage vinyl, the music is driving along, and then every 2 measures, I'm a musician, every 2 measures, there's this incredibly deep single bass tone that hits the room. If you had a subwoofer, or if you had a pair of big floor standers capable of going down to 30 hertz, that's the one that raises the hairs on your skin. You can palpably feel it, this single deep bass tone, okay? The JBLs pick it up, really pick it up at medium volume level down to 40 hertz to where you go, wow, I can't believe that they play that note, okay? But of course, I can't crank it to 95 dB because the woofer excursion can't handle it. They're small woofers, but they're capable of getting down there. So the turntable gets down into that bass note. The cartridge gets down into that bass note, and at a medium loud volume level, okay, just before you're pushing it too far, the speakers grab that bass note. Well, guess what? On the DAC side, that note was gone. You could only hear, I was really surprised by this because it's a digital file. I thought it has more dynamic range, The way the mids were far less loud, that bass tone was far less loud. And it didn't go as deep. I was actually like, no, the difference is that much. You could only hear half of that deep output of that bass tone. That's it, guys. What an interesting experience. Cleaner, clearer mids and highs, a more digital and precise and smoother sound all across the board on the digital side, a bigger, thicker, warmer sound on this side with the turntable, and specifically I think is because of the MP110, and able to pick up, which is a good thing, this super deep bass note. But on the DAC side, no, didn't get the super deep bass note. Amazing, really, really interesting experience. Not at all what I expected. I highly recommend this album, and I hope you enjoyed this. Give me a thumbs up. If you're interested in the Amari LP10 turntable, guys, it's the finest, untouchable, spring-suspended, exquisitely made turntable, spring-suspended turntable on planet Earth. Nothing even comes close at the $1,500 price point. And that's it. Thanks a lot for listening. I hope you enjoyed this review of the equipment and the comparison. It's all great fun. We love our audio gear. And we'll catch you later.